third party and your special person's ex showed your photo to a psychic, and what happened next left both of them completely shaken, because the psychic did not react to you the way they expected. My beloved child, don't skip. Stay till the end because something huge is waiting, and the most surprising part of this story is not simply what the psychic said when she looked at your picture. It is what your special person began realizing about you after hearing the details. It started with something that seemed almost harmless. A conversation. A little curiosity. A moment when your special person was not even in the room. Someone close to the situation had been talking with your special person's ex, and somehow your name came up. Maybe they were trying to understand why your presence had created such a noticeable change. Maybe they wanted to know why your special person seemed different whenever you were mentioned. Or perhaps the ex had been quietly comparing themselves to you for longer than anyone realized. Whatever the reason, they had a photo of you. And instead of simply looking at it and moving on, they decided to show it to someone they believed was unusually good at reading people. They expected something simple. A few vague observations. Maybe a personality guess. Maybe a comment they could laugh about afterward. But the moment the psychic looked closely at your face, her expression changed. She stopped talking. That silence was the first thing that made everyone uncomfortable. Because only seconds earlier, she had been speaking easily. Then she looked at your photograph again, leaned closer, and became strangely focused. Your special person's ex noticed it immediately. What? The psychic did not answer. She kept studying the photo. And here is where everything began to shift. Because what caught her attention was not simply your appearance. It was something she believed she could see in the way you carried yourself. The way your eyes seemed alert without appearing anxious. The way your expression looked calm while still suggesting that your mind was constantly processing things. The strange combination of softness and awareness. And then she said something neither person expected. This person notices far more than people realize. The ex almost laughed. It sounded too simple. But the psychic continued. She said you seemed like the kind of person who could enter an ordinary situation, remain quiet for several minutes, and still understand details other people had missed completely. You might not always explain what you know. You might not announce every conclusion. You may even allow people to underestimate you. But your mind was always connecting things. Patterns. Tone. Behavior. Small inconsistencies. Unspoken emotion. Details most people dismiss. And suddenly your special person's ex was no longer smiling. Because that description reminded them of something. A moment involving you that they had previously dismissed. And don't skip here, because this is where the first real clue appears. There had been a situation where you seemed to understand what was happening before anyone explained it. Maybe someone entered the room carrying a certain tension. Maybe a conversation changed direction. Maybe there was a problem everyone else was trying to solve. You did not make a dramatic announcement. You simply made one observation. One suggestion. One quiet decision. And somehow you were right. At the time, people called it luck. They thought you had guessed. But now that memory suddenly looked different. The psychic looked at your photograph again. This person has a natural ability they probably don't even think is unusual. That sentence changed the energy completely. Because your special person's ex had gone into that room expecting to hear something that would make you seem ordinary. Instead, every new sentence seemed to make you more difficult to dismiss. The third party leaned forward. What kind of ability? The psychic paused. And this is where the mystery became deeper, because she refused to reduce it to one simple talent. She said it could appear in different ways depending on what you were doing. Sometimes it might look like intuition. Sometimes creativity. Sometimes problem solving. Sometimes emotional intelligence. Sometimes the ability to understand complicated things much faster than expected. But underneath all of those possibilities was one consistent quality. Your mind noticed connections. You could take pieces that looked unrelated to everyone else and somehow see how they fit together. And the strangest part? You probably thought everybody could do it. My beloved child, that detail matters more than it seems. Because one of the strongest things about a natural talent is that the person carrying it often does not recognize how unusual it is. If something has always come easily to you, you may assume it comes easily to everyone. If you naturally understand people, you may think you are simply paying attention. If you naturally organize chaos, you may think you are just handling what needs to be handled. If you naturally create, solve, remember, observe, communicate, design, repair, write, calculate, plan, lead, or understand complicated situations, you may have spent years calling it normal. But someone watching from the outside sees something different. And according to what was being said in that room, that was exactly what had happened with you. The ex suddenly remembered another moment. Then another. Little things. Things that seemed insignificant at the time. The way you had once solved something difficult without making a big deal about it. The way you remembered a detail nobody expected you to remember. The way you understood the meaning behind someone's words before the rest of the room caught on. The way you occasionally said something so accurate that people became quiet afterward. The way you seemed able to concentrate completely when something genuinely interested you. And one by one, those forgotten moments began returning. That was when the ex asked the question that changed everything. Then why doesn't this person show it more? The psychic looked down at the photograph. Maybe they are showing it all the time. Silence. But everyone around them has become so used to it that they stopped recognizing it. That answer stayed in the room. Because suddenly the story was no longer about some mysterious hidden ability. The ability had never been truly hidden. It had been present in fragments. People had simply been looking for something dramatic. They expected talent to announce itself. They expected confidence to be loud. They expected intelligence to constantly prove itself. They expected gifted people to explain why they were gifted. But you did not do that. You simply moved through ordinary life being yourself. And what seemed ordinary from inside your experience looked very different when someone finally examined it carefully. But what happened next surprised them even more. The psychic said, "This person may have been underestimated." The ex's expression changed again. Because those words touched something uncomfortable. They remembered times when people had assumed you did not understand a situation simply because you stayed quiet. Times when somebody spoke over you. Times when others underestimated what you could handle. Maybe even times when your special person themselves failed to realize how much was happening beneath your calm exterior. And now the ex began wondering whether your silence had ever been mistaken for lack of depth. Whether your humility had been confused with uncertainty. Whether your patience had been mistaken for weakness. Whether your refusal to constantly show off had prevented people from recognizing what was right in front of them. The third party asked another question. What happens if they actually start using it seriously? The psychic smiled. And this is where the conversation moved in a direction nobody expected. She did not predict fame. She did not promise instant wealth. She did not claim that some magical future was guaranteed. Instead, she said something far more believable. If this person ever recognizes what comes naturally to them and develops it intentionally, they could surprise a lot of people. That sentence became impossible to forget. Because there is a difference between possessing an ability and understanding what that ability could become. There is a difference between casually doing something well and realizing it deserves attention. There is a difference between being naturally capable and intentionally becoming excellent. And suddenly the people looking at your photo were no longer asking, "Who does this person think they are?" They were asking something completely different. What if they have no idea what they're capable of? But the strangest part was still ahead. Some version of this conversation eventually reached your special person. Maybe not every sentence. Maybe the ex did not want to repeat everything. Maybe the third party shared more than they were supposed to. Maybe your special person simply noticed how strangely people were behaving and demanded to know what had happened. But somehow, the central idea reached them. Someone had looked at your photograph and described qualities that sounded disturbingly familiar. And when your special person heard it, their first reaction was skepticism. Not because they thought badly of you, but because they believed they already knew you. They thought, "I've spent time with this person. I would know." Then one memory returned. And suddenly another. They remembered watching you do something they could not easily explain. It may have been an ordinary moment. Maybe you were fixing something. Planning something. Creating something. Solving something. Writing something. Understanding someone. Handling a difficult conversation. Or simply noticing one detail everyone else had missed. They remembered the casual way you did it. No announcement. No performance. No attempt to impress. You simply finished what you were doing and continued with your day. But your special person had noticed. At the time, they had not understood why that moment stayed in their memory. Now they did. And that is when the psychic's comment began bothering them. This person notices far more than people realize. Your special person started replaying conversations with you. And here is where everything changes. Because once someone begins looking at you through a new lens, old memories start revealing information that was always there. They remembered moments when you understood their mood before they explained it. Moments when you seemed to know when something was wrong. Moments when you asked an unexpectedly precise question. Moments when you offered a solution they had not considered. Moments when you quietly adjusted to a difficult situation without complaining. Moments when your mind seemed to move faster than your words. And suddenly your special person had the same question the ex had asked. How did I never see this? But then another thought followed immediately. Maybe they had seen it. Maybe they simply never understood what they were seeing. My beloved child, this is where the talent stops being the real story. Because your special person begins realizing that what impressed them was not merely your ability to do something well. It was the way you carried that ability. Quietly. Naturally. Without demanding recognition. They had met people who constantly talked about their accomplishments. People who wanted everyone to know how intelligent they were. People who made sure every skill was seen. People who turned every small success into an announcement. But you were different. You could do something remarkable and still say, "It's nothing." That began affecting your special person more deeply than they expected. Because ability is impressive. But ability without arrogance creates something else. Respect. And respect has a way of changing attraction. Suddenly your special person began observing you differently. The way you listened. The way your eyes changed when you became focused. The way your voice became more certain when speaking about something you truly understood. The way you sometimes paused before answering because your mind was processing more than you wanted to say. The way you could look completely relaxed and then solve something complicated almost effortlessly. And one detail kept replaying in their mind. You did not seem aware that any of it was impressive. That fascinated them. They imagined complimenting you. They could almost hear your response. It wasn't a big deal. And that made them want to ask, "Do you really not see it?" Because from their side, it was becoming impossible not to see. Then your special person remembered something even more personal. A time when they had needed help. Maybe they had been confused. Maybe overwhelmed. Maybe emotionally exhausted. You did not arrive with a speech. You did not act superior. You simply understood. You helped them organize what felt chaotic. Or you said one sentence that suddenly made the situation clearer. Or you noticed the real problem behind the problem. At the time, your special person thought you were just being supportive. Now they wondered whether they had been witnessing the same hidden ability. Not once. But repeatedly. And here is where another layer opened. Your special person started asking why you had never told them about this side of yourself. Why did you never say, "I'm good at this"? Why did you never make it part of your identity? Why did you never seem interested in proving it? At first, they wondered whether you had intentionally kept something from them. But the longer they thought about it, the less that explanation made sense. You were not hiding. You simply did not consider it worth announcing. That realization hit harder than the talent itself. Because what looks extraordinary from the outside may feel completely normal to someone who has lived with it every day. Maybe you had been doing this since childhood. Maybe you learned to observe because life required you to. Maybe you became resourceful because you often had to figure things out yourself. Maybe creativity became second nature because it gave your mind somewhere to go. Maybe you learned to understand people because you spent years paying attention to things nobody said aloud. Maybe you became calm under pressure because you had already survived moments that required calm. Your special person began wondering what experiences had shaped the ability they were only now noticing. And suddenly this was no longer simply fascination. It became a desire to understand you more deeply. The psychic may have pointed toward the first clue. But your special person was now putting the rest of the puzzle together themselves. And what they discovered next became even more powerful. They noticed that whenever you used this natural ability, your entire presence seemed to change. You became more focused, more certain, more alive. There was a calmness in you. A kind of concentration that pushed everything else into the background. You stopped questioning yourself. Instinct took over. And for a moment, you seemed completely connected to who you were. That created a question your special person could not shake. Did I discover something they're good at, or did I discover the place where they become most fully themselves? That question stayed with them. Because everyone has moments when they look slightly different. Not physically. Energetically. There are moments when someone is doing something that fits them so naturally that uncertainty disappears. Their voice changes. Their posture changes. Their attention sharpens. They stop performing. They stop trying to be anything. They simply become. And your special person realized they had seen that version of you before. They just had not known what it meant. That is when old memories began turning into evidence. Something they once thought was luck now looked like natural intelligence. Something they once called a coincidence now looked like observation. A small thing you created now seemed like evidence of genuine creativity. A calm choice looked like experience. A quick solution looked like instinct. A casual accomplishment looked less casual. The puzzle pieces clicked together one after another. But even then, your special person was not finished discovering you. Because admiration eventually led to another question. How far could they go if they actually believed in this? Not how rich. Not how famous. Not whether the world would suddenly recognize your name. Something more personal. How different might your confidence become if you stopped dismissing what comes naturally to you? What might happen if you practiced it? Developed it? Used it more intentionally? Built opportunities around it? What if the thing you treat as ordinary is actually one of the qualities that could open a new direction in your life? Your special person began imagining you taking yourself more seriously. Not becoming arrogant. Not turning into somebody else. Simply recognizing value where you once saw nothing special. And something about that image affected them emotionally. Because they could imagine you growing into a version of yourself that was already quietly taking shape. And this is where the X's reaction becomes important again. The X had originally participated in showing your photograph because there was curiosity about you. Perhaps even comparison. Maybe they hoped to hear something that would reduce your importance. Something that would make your special person's interest easier to understand. But instead, every answer created another reason people might be drawn toward you. Not because you were perfect. Not because you possessed supernatural qualities. But because you had depth that was easy to miss during a first glance. And for someone who wanted you to seem simple, that was frustrating. That may be why their reaction became so intense. The more they heard, the more they had to confront a possibility they did not like. Your special person might not be fascinated by you for one obvious reason. They might be fascinated because there is always another layer. Another thought. Another ability. Another side of your personality that appears when circumstances bring it forward. And your special person began feeling this too. They realized knowing you might never be a finished experience. There could always be something else to discover. That thought created a strange mixture of attraction and curiosity. They wanted to watch you more closely. Not suspiciously. Not because they expected secrets. Because ordinary moments suddenly became interesting. How would you respond when something unexpected happened? What would you notice? What would you create? What would you solve? What side of you would appear when you stopped thinking about being observed? They became especially curious about the moments when you thought nobody was paying attention. Because that was where the first discovery had happened. Not while you were trying to impress anyone. While you were simply being yourself. And my beloved child, this leads to the deepest part of the entire revelation. Your special person thought somebody had discovered a talent. But eventually they realized the talent was only a doorway. What they had actually discovered was another dimension of you. Your discipline. Your awareness. Your humility. Your ability to learn. Your resilience. Your instincts. The experiences that shape the way you think. The potential that may still be unexplored. And perhaps most importantly, the possibility that you have underestimated yourself far more often than anyone around you realized. That thought began affecting your special person emotionally. They wished for one moment that you could see yourself through their eyes. Not because they wanted you to become somebody different. Because they wanted you to understand why something you dismiss so easily could leave another person stunned. They imagined telling you everything. They imagined saying, you know that thing you do without thinking? That thing you keep calling normal? I don't think you understand how rare it looks from here. But they also knew you might laugh. You might shrug. You might say, anybody could do that. And perhaps that would make them smile, because your inability to see the full effect of your own ability had become part of what made the discovery so memorable. But there is one more realization. And this may be the one that stays with them longest. Nothing about you changed on the day your photograph was shown. You did not suddenly become more intelligent, more creative, more observant, more capable, more interesting. You had been all of those things before anyone began noticing. The accidental moment did not create a new version of you. It changed how clearly people could see the version that had always been there. Your special person understands that now. They are looking backward through memories and realizing how many clues they missed. They are looking at the present differently. And when they think about your future, they are wondering whether you are eventually going to recognize the same thing they have begun recognizing. That your natural gifts deserve more than dismissal. That some of the things you call ordinary may be exactly the things that make you unmistakably yourself. And maybe that is why your special person cannot stop thinking about what happened. It was never really about a photograph. It was never only about what somebody claimed to see. It was about what that strange conversation caused everyone to remember. Real moments. Real observations. Real pieces of you that had been overlooked. Your special person now understands something the X did not expect them to understand. There may always be another layer to you. Not because you are hiding. Because people are complicated, and the deepest parts of someone often appear gradually. Through ordinary mornings. Unexpected problems. Quiet conversations. Moments of concentration. Small choices. Things nobody thinks are important until one day they suddenly are. And now your special person watches those moments differently. They notice when your expression changes because your mind has caught something. They notice when you become absorbed in what you are doing. They notice how quickly instinct sometimes takes over. They notice the calm confidence that appears when you stop thinking about whether anyone approves. And every time it happens, the same thought returns. What else have I not discovered yet? That question no longer frightens them. It excites them. Because the first discovery taught them that getting to know you may not mean reaching one final answer. It may mean continuing to uncover pieces of someone who was deeper than they first understood. My beloved child, perhaps that is the real surprise waiting at the end of this story. Your special person did not discover another person hiding inside you. They discovered more of the person who had been standing in front of them all along. The talent was only the first clue. What truly shocked them was your depth. The natural way you carry ability without needing applause. The way parts of your potential may still be waiting for even you to recognize them. And the possibility that this first accidental discovery was only the beginning. Because now, when your special person looks at you, they are no longer only seeing who they thought you were. They are paying attention to who you already are beneath all the things you have learned to call ordinary. And somewhere inside their mind, one question remains open. What happens when you finally see it too? What happens when the ability you have spent years treating as nothing becomes something you intentionally develop? What happens when confidence finally catches up with potential? Nobody can know exactly where that road leads. But your special person knows one thing now. They will never look at those quiet, ordinary moments the same way again. Because sometimes the biggest revelation is not discovering that someone has changed. Sometimes it is realizing how much of them was always there, waiting to be noticed. And perhaps the most surprising thing still ahead is not what you can do. It is who you may become when you finally stop assuming that your most natural gifts are ordinary.